Hey, thanks for joining me on the Life Podcast, where you guessed it, we talk about life. My name is Austin, and I'm so excited that you are tuning in. This podcast exists to encourage you and walk alongside you as you experience life. So thanks for tuning in. Now let's get into today's episode. All right, welcome back to another episode. I believe this is episode number 5 of the Life Podcast. I'm super excited for today, super excited for the guests on the show. I know I say that every single week, but I really mean it this week. And if you were a guest on my show, I really meant it all the other weeks as well. So again, thanks for coming. And this week's going to be a treat. I have with me somebody very special to me, my beautiful wife. Her name is McKinsay. And we have been together for 6 years, but we've been married for 2 years. We have one baby, one daughter. Her name is Ellie. We love her. She's the best. And anyway, Kinsey, go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
So I'm McKinsay, and I'm Austin's wife.
Of course.
I'm complete opposite of Austin when we were raised. I was raised more like farm animals. Austin's more so a city boy.
That's right. And we've converted her.
Oh, no, you haven't.
Oh, okay.
But I currently stay at home with Ellie, and I watch my niece and my little brother, and I just hang out, love on people.
There you go. That's a good philosophy. Yeah. Like I said, Kinsey and I have been married for a little over 2 years, about 2.5 years now. And it's been a great journey since then. And today's episode is really going to revolve around kind of mine and Kinsey's story. We're going to talk about our own experiences, and I believe that there will be something that anybody could really gain from our experiences that we've had together. I think that this is the Life Podcast, where we talk about life, and people are in relationships, people are experiencing all sorts of stuff. And I think that Kinsey and I have experienced some things together that will speak to your guys' situations, that will speak to where you feel like you're at in life. And I think it'll be helpful for you guys to get to know us as well. You've been listening to 5 episodes of the podcast so far, and I haven't really said much about myself. So you'll get a little bit of an insight as in my life and mine and Kinsey's life. So yeah, without further ado, I think we're going to hop right into it. And I want to start off by telling a little story about Kinsey and I, just to get you guys a little feel for how we are. Kinsey knows what story I'm going to tell. It's the same story I tell if I ever have to tell anybody a story of Kinsey and I, because this is a classic. So I remember when Kinsey and I first started dating. Well, this is before we started dating, before I officially asked her to date me, to be my girlfriend. And it was the day after Valentine's Day, 2014. We were going to go on a date because we didn't go on a date on Valentine's Day because I had a basketball game. And we were going on a double date with my mom and my stepdad at the time. I remember picking you up from your grandparents' house. I brought you flowers because chivalry is very much alive. And I'm a gentleman, right? You'd say so?
I still have those flowers.
Wow. I didn't even know that, to be honest. So she still has those flowers. Like I said, I'm a gentleman. So we went out to Bonefish Grill in Tri-City, Washington. I don't even like seafood that much, so I don't know why we went there, but it was a great date. And I had this whole date planned out in my head. After the date, we were going to watch a movie, and I was going to ask Kinsey to be my girlfriend, and it was going to be a magical night. And at the time, we were sophomores in high school, just so you guys have a little context. We were sophomores in high school, and so the date went well. We went back to my place to watch a movie, and we watched Hunger Games. And I remember after the movie, the credits started rolling, and this was when my plan was going to be put into action. I was going to ask her the big question, will you be my girlfriend? So as the credits are rolling, we're kind of cuddling on the couch. I just turn to her. She turns to look at me, and I say, Kinsey, I have a question for you. Probably said something like, we've been talking for a few months now or whatever. And then I said, McKinsey, will you be my boyfriend? And she looked at me, and I didn't even realize that I had said the word boyfriend for a couple seconds there. And she probably was a little concerned at first, thinking, uh-oh, this can't be good. And then she gave me a chance to redeem myself. And I asked the right question, said, Kinsey, will you be my girlfriend? She said yes. Here we are, 6 years later, one marriage, beautiful baby. And life has been quite the journey. But thanks for accepting my invitation to be my boyfriend, I guess. Girlfriend, there we go. Girlfriend. So thanks for sticking by me all these years. It's been a great ride. So like I said, that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to share mine and Kinsey's story. Kinsey's going to give us some insight. We're going to talk about the struggles we've had in our relationship. We're going to talk about some victories that we've had as well. And Again, this is the Life Podcast, and I want to speak directly to your guys' situation. So here's the first question, Kinsey, that I want to ask you. And we're going to talk about dating. We're going to talk about marriage. Going to talk a little bit about parenting probably. And we're a really young couple too. So we'll talk a little bit about what it's like to be such a young couple as well. So first question, Kinsey, for you. What was your biggest struggle while we were dating? Oh, and I got to say too that I have been the only person that Kinsey's ever dated. So her experience is limited to me.
Very
so
limited.
any bad thing she says is about me, just so you guys know. Okay. So go ahead. You can answer that question now.
I think personally for me, my biggest struggle was with where I was at in life when we first like actually got acquainted and started dating, because I had just gone through a whole bunch of stuff and I still didn't know who I was. And so I think my biggest struggle was being myself and not like I like gave everything to our relationship. And I was like ready to get married when we were like 17. I was like, let's do it.
And Austin was not ready to do that.
Austin was not ready. And so like, as Austin said, I had never dated anybody before. And so I didn't necessarily have that experience to like, of the parameters of dating. And I'm just going to preface it with, I had a brain injury, so I'm going to blame it on that. Yeah.
Why don't you tell us, you said that you weren't, you didn't really know who you were. Maybe tell us a little bit about what you went through prior to us dating. I feel like it'll give people some context as to what was going on.
Oh yeah. So we started dating in 2014. We met each other at the end of 2013. Well, quote unquote met. We knew each other, but earlier in 2013, I was in a 4-wheeler accident. And so it was a really bad thing, and I had like a traumatic brain injury. And I don't remember a lot of my childhood now, but my mom speaks a lot to how me as a person changed. And I like my personality, who I was, what I liked, the people I was around.
Yeah.
I played sports like with every season, and then I couldn't play sports anymore. So there's like a lot of, it was just like somebody else's life that I had gone into. And then on top of that, when we first started talking, my parents were in the middle of splitting. And so I feel like it was just a lot of craziness around finding who I was now, apart from who I was before. And then encompassing all of that with my first boyfriend was a little difficult. Not, so to speak, when it was happening. I didn't realize the significance of it then. But looking back, I can see like, wow.
Wow.
So
yeah. I think that I like what you said, that you didn't really know who you are. And well, tell me, why was it a struggle for you that you didn't really know who you were when we first started, like throughout our dating process? Like, why would that be a struggle?
Well, I think it was especially because like we had known each other since we were in kindergarten, and our basketball teams played against each other.
We go way back.
Oh yeah. But we didn't like actually ever talk.
Right.
So I didn't know you. You didn't know me. And so as you go into like that dating parameters with somebody, you get to know who they are, what they like, all of these things. And I remember you told me that like the first night we started talking, like I had just got my braces on. We met at a basketball game. We exchanged numbers.
I got her number, folks.
And
I did it.
I don't remember this, but you told me that I like poured my heart and soul to you.
Yeah, like
before
literally
we even like were together.
The first night after I had gotten your phone number, we were texting, and you had just sent me like some of the longest messages about all your feelings. And I literally had this thought. I was like, what did I just get myself into? This girl is like I'm holding some serious emotional baggage for this girl. Like I didn't know what was going to happen, but lucky for you, I stayed, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
No, but for real, it was interesting for me. I was maneuvering it too. But yeah, I think just to speak to that for a second, it is so important to know who you are before even thinking about dating, marriage, all that stuff. Because if you don't know who you are,
you're going to give a false perception of yourself to somebody you're trying to do not necessarily do life with, but like learn to get to know, to see if you could do life with this person.
Yeah. And I think out of who you are really flows your values, flows what you care about. So if you don't know who you are, it's going to be very difficult to determine what's important to you, to determine your priorities. And it's just all around. I think that there's a lot of insecurities that come around with things like not knowing who you are, and insecurity just breeds trouble sometimes, especially in relationships. So it's super important to know who you are in that sense. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's interesting stuff. And we haven't, honestly, just so you guys know, we didn't really talk a lot about any of this. I gave Kinsey some questions that I was going to ask her and let her come up with what she was going to say. So a lot of what she's saying could be news to me. I could be hearing it for the first time. Who knows?
Hopefully not for the first time after 6 years.
Yeah, but I don't know what your answers are for these questions, so it's interesting. I think for me, one of the biggest struggles that we had while dating was that we were very like emotionally involved with each other. Like I poured
my heart to you on the first night.
Right. Like I said, you poured your heart out to me on the very first night. I was just a sophomore boy in high school, and I was not ready to handle all that.
We were too young for all that.
Yeah, and I think we got so emotionally involved so quick. It was like we were probably quick to say I love you, quick to like super mushy gushy, but like it was far more than I could handle as a sophomore boy. I was still growing. I was still becoming who I was going to be, and so to handle like that process of you becoming who you are was a lot for me as well. And I remember having many thoughts, like, I don't know if I can handle this. I don't know if I can like support her in the way that she needs. And I didn't really notice it in the moment, but now that I look back on it, I think to myself, wow, like if Kinsey and I would have split in high school, that would have been
so hard.
It would have done some serious damage to me emotionally because I was so invested in you and who you were. And that would have been so unhealthy. That's why I think like it's so important to date in a godly way, to set boundaries, certain things you won't say, certain things you won't do. As soon as you take certain steps physically with each other, then you begin to become even more emotionally attached. And that's why God says to keep sex within marriage, because it creates this spiritual and emotional bond that once you split and say you are having sex outside of marriage, I'm not like judging you or saying anything like that, but I am saying that God never intended it to be that way, because it's safer when sex is in marriage. Outside of marriage, all it leads to is heartbreak. It leads to hurt. It leads to pain. And God doesn't want us to experience those things. So yeah, I think we were very emotionally involved, and that did a number on me in high school. But
and a lot of people don't even realize that, like, when you hug somebody, if you're doing, I'm going to use an example of, what's that, like, big family,
the Duggars,
and
they side hug.
How they side hugged?
Yeah,
there's like reasons for that, because if you hug somebody like front to front for more than like, I think it's like 7 seconds, you're in your brain chemically, it creates like a bond with that person on like an intimate level. And we don't even realize that. Like, I had a friend in high school that didn't even realize that laying in the same bed or like just taking a nap with somebody creates such huge bonds that you don't even realize are there until you've already created them. You're already in them, and then it just leads to so much more. Right.
And I think that we progressed way too fast for where we were at in life. Like, we were only sophomores in high school, and like Kinsey said at the beginning, she was ready to get married when she turned 17, because we had already progressed emotionally so fast. That was
the next step.
And there's only so far that you can go before marriage. And so, that was definitely one of the biggest struggles. So man, my encouragement to you guys who are dating, I know that I was dating in high school, but seriously, I always tell everybody,
you're like 18.
Yeah, I would not date in high school. I would wait until you're out of high school. Not for the sake of proximity, of being close to people, but because it really just, like, you don't need to be dealing with all that in that period of your life. I don't think it's bad to date in high school, but I think that it would really depend on each person.
You can find the person that you're meant to be with when you're 16, but it just makes that journey so much harder to go through, because you can't live like you're adults in that manner.
Right.
You can't, like, in your relationship, you can't take the next steps that you want to take because you are only 16.
Yeah.
And so that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest struggles for us, of course. So let me translate this then. So that was kind of while we were dating. let me ask you this to kind of flip the switch. Now that we're married, what is I want to ask you what the hardest parts of marriage are and what the best parts of marriage are. But let's start with the best first, since we already did the struggles of dating. So let me just tell you guys, for me, the best part of marriage, sex. It has to be. Nothing from you. Okay. No, honestly, that's not the best part of marriage. But I think that
it's a plus, but
it's a plus. It's a plus for sure. Anyway, enough of that, Kinsey. Stop. We don't need to be talking too much about that. Okay. No, literally the best part about marriage, and I think Kinsey will probably say something very similar to me, is that you really just get to spend all your time with somebody who you love. You get to I guess the phrase that we always use is we get to do life together.
Hey, that's exactly what I put.
See, guys, do I know my wife or do I know my wife? Anyway, you get to do life together. You get to and when you follow marriage biblically, that means like we didn't move in together until we got married. And so, because once you move in together, you really start to do life together. And so we didn't move in together until we were married. So I mean, it was really new for us. Everything was like fun and exciting, living together, adjusting to what it's like to live with a girl with all the hair in the shower, and Kinsey sheds like a dog.
Okay, but that was only postpartum.
Well, anyway,
you have to admit most of that was postpartum.
True. But okay, so that was, I guess, for me. What would you say is the best part of marriage so far for you?
I would say, like you said, doing life together, but it's also about like doing things for us, because when you get married, which it's really a hard transition that we don't realize now that we're parents. I see that like it's a super hard transition for our parents, having us be the person, like for our parents, they're the person that we come to, we make decisions with, we do things with, we plan our day, we plan our months, our trips, our everything for 18 years. And then potentially more, and then we get married, and now we are doing things for us. And I guess that's one of my favorite parts, is that like we're making decisions based on what we want to do for our family, where we want to go, who we want to go with, decisions we want to do with our careers. Like it's a us thing, which is really awesome, because it's like you have this person that you love and you adore and you cherish, like, and you value how they think, that you can bounce ideas off of and say, I want to, on a whim, make this fun life decision. What do you say? And getting excited together and going through all that together. Let
me say this, because I feel like society, non-Christian society, the outside of the church, has a really bad view of marriage, and that can obviously be seen in things like the divorce rates. But I think that society has a bad view on marriage, because they're not doing it the right way. Let me say it this way. When Kinsey and I got married, I cannot tell you the amount of people that came up to me and said, "Are you ready for your freedom to be over? Are you ready to get the old ball and chain?" Like, I remember right
just
after
wait till the honeymoon phase ends.
Yeah, I remember right when we got married, one of my coworkers from at a place I used to work, he would ask me every day I came into work. He said, "Hey, have you guys had your big fight yet? Have you guys had a fight yet?" And I was like, "Well, we've had disagreements, but we're not like fighting."
We've never had like a fight before in our 6 years of like being together.
Yeah, not like a
we've
yelling,
had disagreements,
screaming.
But we've also put parameters on that for ourselves of like we don't raise our voice.
Yeah, we can
together.
We can talk a little bit more about that later, but I think that I wonder why society has such a bad view on things like that. Like, because it was as soon as I told people that I was getting married, first they were like, "Wow, you're so young, you don't do this yet."
I think it's also because society puts a huge view on things that are weighing us down, the negative aspects of things. Like in today's society, it's so easy to look at something and being like, "Oh, I have to do this because X, Y, and Z," and not looking at it from the other perspective of I get to do this because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So I think that's also why people always go towards those, because it's our nature to elevate towards, or to like move towards the negative aspects of things, or to ask about what's wrong in your life instead of what's good.
Yeah, we really focus on the bad things and maybe the hard parts of marriage and relationships, not necessarily the best parts and the good parts, because marriage was established by God, and God didn't establish marriage for us to have a crappy life. He established marriage because it's quite literally a picture of Jesus and the church, and it's a good picture. And I think once we start viewing marriage as that, it will change our perspective on it and on any of our relationships, really. But yeah, I really was like getting fed up right before we got married of people asking me, why are you doing this? Wow, you're so young. I can't believe you got married so young. Even like a couple days ago.
People were saying things like, oh, you guys are going to change so much. How do you know you're going to still like love this person in 20 years?
Yeah. I even remember some of my family was telling me, like, Austin, like, you're not fully developed until you're 25 or 30 or whatever the number is. And I think that Kinsey and I have definitely had our times where we're like, oh my gosh, like we're changing, we're wanting different things, but we've worked through those things. And
it's about choosing to love the other person, because when you get married, you're making a choice.
Yeah.
And when you make that choice, you have to understand that it might not be easy.
True.
But it'll be worth it in the end. It's about looking long-term instead of short-term gratification.
Yeah. Yeah. We as Americans really tend to shy away from the uncomfortable situations in life. But
that's often where the best things are.
Yeah. That's where the best things are. You said it. I agree with that 100%. So let me ask you this. What is the hardest part about marriage? Let me tell you mine. Okay. The hardest part for me is sharing a bed. I did not realize that was going to be the biggest struggle of my marriage.
But that's because we're both diagonal sleepers.
Yeah, plus you don't share the bed though. Like I get 10%, you get 90. How is that fair? And then when we had a baby, I got 5% and you two got 95.
For like 5 months.
That was a long 5 months. Anyway, that's not really my hardest part of marriage, but that's something I always like to tease Kinsey about. But what is maybe the hardest thing for that you've experienced in our marriage so far?
I think the hardest part for me has been being on the same page in communication, because when you're dating, when you're living in separate houses, you're forced to communicate more about, not saying we don't talk or communicate, but just about like day-to-day plans of like, I'll be home all day, you come home, and I'll just have this idea of like, okay, I'm doing X, Y, and Z while I'm at home and Austin's at work. I'm going to get this stuff done. And then when he gets home, we're going to go do this, run this errand, go see this person, all these things. Mm-hmm. But I haven't really relayed that information to you. And so that's something for me that's hard to navigate, because like when we are living in separate houses, I would be like, hey, are you home? I'm doing this. We should go do this. Like, it's forcing you to make those plans, because when you're married, I feel like we just have this idea that you know what I'm thinking and I know what you're thinking or wanting to do. Mm-hmm. And that's often, I feel like, where most of our, it's not necessarily disagreements, but that's where a lot of tension comes, just because we both have a different idea of what the day's going to look like, because we haven't actually communicated what we want the day to look like. Yeah,
I'm always telling Kinsey that I can't read her mind. I can't do it. I try, and I get it wrong more often than not. So communication is key, and I think anybody will tell you that.
Yeah.
We've gotten better at it. We actually just recently, like literally with the past couple of days, we made a Google Calendar together that we can.
Well, yeah, one for you, one for me, that we share.
Oh, well, yeah. And we put my work schedule in there, and we're trying to figure this all out. So we're really trying to overcome those barriers. And that's something really simple that we can do, of course, but definitely makes a huge difference when you're on the same page versus when you're not. And miscommunication could lead to a lot of pain and struggle as well, too. So I think that one of the biggest struggles that I've had so far in marriage, and this was early on in our marriage, when we first got married, I was working 2 jobs and I was going to school full time. So I was working one full-time job, and I had an internship that was about 20 hours a week. So that was 60 hours every week, plus school and all my practicums and things that I had to do for school. So I was so busy, right when we first got married. And I remember Kinsey was working a job during the day. She worked at a school, so she was working like 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then I was working at Domino's at night. So I was working like 4
o'clock to like
4 p.m. to 1 or 2 in the morning every single night. And we would see each other in passing, or Kinsey would come hang out with me while I took a break at work, or vice versa.
I spent a lot of time, I feel like, in our first couple months of marriage, just sitting in the Domino's parking lot watching Netflix, so that I could like see you on your break or on your lunch, bring you food and hang out for a bit.
Yeah, that was honestly one of the biggest struggles for me. And I literally went into like a little bit of a like state of depression because I was like, I'm not seeing my wife, and I worked at nights, and I felt like I was missing out on all the family things and all the things that all my friends were doing. And it was like getting to me, and it was probably one of the hardest seasons of my life. And that was right when we got married. So like we planned a wedding and all of that as well. So it was definitely a struggle. And I think time management really is key, especially in a marriage. Like you need to make time for each other. You need to make time for yourselves. What is something that, Kinsey, that this is not, I didn't write this question down on that paper for you, but what is something that you feel that you need time for yourself to do? Because I think that alone time is good in a marriage, and I also think that together time is very necessary as well. So what are some things that you like to do in your own time when you have some time to rest or whatnot? What are things that you do to kind of reset?
As a mom, I would say one thing that I've been focusing on a lot lately is like turning off the TV, putting my phone somewhere where I don't remember where it's at, and like reading Ellie a book, or just like holding her, singing her a song, that type of thing helps a lot. Or just like watching a show with you after Ellie goes to bed. Those are times when I've like, after a day where I feel exhausted or just mentally done, that helps me a lot. Yeah, for couples that are like extremely busy, or even this is like a friendship advice as well. I think that like if you aren't making time for each other, aren't making time for yourself, it could lead to a lot of heartache and struggle. So time management is key, and we are by no means perfect at it. We are getting there, but especially in times of COVID, things are like changing all the time. Like I was working, and then I wasn't, and then I was. So like schedules were always different. And I think that one of the biggest things in marriage, and I think anybody will tell you this, is you have to give grace. You have to give grace, because if you don't, you're going to constantly be disappointed. You're going to be upset because your spouse is not perfect. Kinsey, I hate to say it, but I'm not perfect. I know that.
I know you expect me to. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
I'm
I don't.
not perfect.
I've heard it. Somebody gave me this advice once. It wasn't necessarily about marriage, but I think it goes to like all aspects of life. Of like when something happens, we are so quick to assume the worst, and we need to rewire our brains to always assume the best until proven otherwise. Because we have no idea what other people are thinking or why they're doing what they're doing or any of that. And so we can't make assumptions and then act on that, because that's where a lot of like tension and problems come from. I think that's really good. I think in society, we need to start assuming the best in people, because all I see on social media and every time I talk to somebody, this person's not wearing their mask. Well, do you know why?
Right.
Like, you haven't personally talked to them. You can't make assumptions about them if you don't know them or their story. Yeah,
man, that is key for any relationship, and that's key for loving people. Assume the best. That's really good. I'm glad you said that. I appreciate that. Let's move on a little bit as we transition from marriage. What's been the hardest part about, so like I said, Kinsey and I are parents. Our baby is about a year old now. She just turned 1. And
she's not a baby anymore.
She's not a baby anymore. She's like
a big girl.
Yeah, she's big. She's got one of the big baby bellies. That's pretty cute. Anyway, what's been the, just tell us a little bit about your journey from being a young mom, because we're only 22. And so I remember when we were telling people that we were pregnant, again, people were like, wow, you're so young. And I'm tired of hearing people tell me I'm young. I know I'm 22. Okay. But anyway, tell us a little bit before you tell us that, actually, I wanted to share this story. When Kinsey told me she was pregnant, you guys will like this. I remember she had just gotten back from a trip. She went to go see her uncle in Idaho. And you went to go see a friend in Idaho. Okay. And I remember she came back, and we were living with your grandparents at the time, and I was chilling upstairs. I came down to help you grab your bags, and I came down, grabbed your bags, and you just like ran upstairs to go to the bathroom. I thought you just had to like pee after a long road trip, which I get. But I bring your bag upstairs, and you're just like standing outside the bathroom door and just like looking at me all weird. And I didn't know I thought something was wrong. I was like, do I need to take you to the hospital? Like, that's what I was thinking. And you like walked over to me and just like handed me a pregnancy test and was like, first of all, you just peed on that thing. Get it away from me. Second of all, when then you said that you were pregnant, and I literally just gave you the blankest stare. I didn't say anything.
You were like, oh
yeah, it was
okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, it was not a good moment for me
You
as a
didn't
husband
talk to me for like a
or
week.
as a person. Guys, I am a process thinker, and we were not planning on having Ellie.
No, we were planning on waiting till like you're done with school and
yeah,
we had a home.
Yeah, so that was a surprise to me, and I like to plan things out, so that was a shock. But I would not take it back ever. So Tell us a little bit about your journey as being a young mom.
So when you go into motherhood, there's so many things that nobody tells you, which, I mean, it's at no fault of anybody's, but there are a lot of things and feelings and just how you're going to have to navigate life. It's amazing. It's not a bad thing, but it's just different. And I think there's a lot, like there's this huge area around like mom shaming and mom guilt, whether it's on purpose or on accident, and how people say things to a mom that is like heartbreaking to me, because it's one of the most joyous times in your life. And I wish that every mom just had the opportunity to soak it in and embrace it. Because I remember we had Ellie and everything changed because we still had our friends that are in that season of like young adulthood.
Oh yeah,
and
they're
fun.
They're living it up right now.
Doing whatever they want, staying the night at friend's house, staying out late.
Yeah.
And then you have to navigate this new like, oh my gosh, we're going to go to a friend's house. We're going to go to dinner. And I'm sitting here for the first month. I remember every time we went anywhere, I was like thinking everything in my brain, all of the scenarios that were going to come up. I actually had quite a bit of like anxiety when it came to Ellie when she was first born. I didn't really let people hold her much in her first couple months of life just because it freaked me out. And I remember going places and being like, what's going to happen? Is she going to be hungry? Is somebody going to want to hold her? And then she's going to like need a diaper change. How am I going to be like, oh, I need my baby back? One thing that was super hard to navigate for me was that level of like somebody has her and you can't really read the situation very well. And it's like, okay, do they want me to take my baby back? Do they want to keep her? Like some people are total baby people and they will like, the baby's crying, they really want to soothe them, they want to hold them, they want to play with them. And some people are like nervously holding the kid, being like, oh, I don't know what to do, somebody please take this kid. And you're like, that's so hard to navigate that side of things.
Have you guys ever been at like a some sort of function and you like end up babysitting somebody else's kids?
Yeah, and I didn't ever want people to be like,
I
didn't want people to resent me as a mom because of my perception of what they wanted.
Yeah, it's tough being a parent because everybody feels like they have their own right way of doing something, and if somebody else does it differently, so you've, I mean, handled some anxiety, handled a lot of stress from that. What are some ways that you really coped with that part of motherhood?
In the beginning, not healthily. I just wouldn't take her places that I felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Or I wouldn't give her to people that I felt uncomfortable with. But now I've just realized that like I use a lot of like essential oils, and that's one thing that has helped me a ton is I've found these couple rollers and oils that work the best for me because they work differently for everybody. And so I found the ones that work for me, and I will use them, and I will like speak affirmations about myself and remind myself of like all the positive things that are going to come in this interaction, and like all the things that I want to happen and want to start up. But and then also I've just given like a lot of grace in that. With like, I can't control every situation. I'm not going to be able to. It does no good trying to.
Right.
So I'm just going to let it be and deal with things as they come up.
Yeah, I think and I've said this in another episode, I don't remember which one it was, but I think that we have this like idea that we need to control everything. And believe me, I'm a huge control freak. Like I want to control things.
That's why you didn't talk to me when I Told you we were pregnant.
Right, because I wanted to control my life, and I felt like I had no control. Anyway, yeah, it's really important. I think this false idea that we are in control of everything leads to stress, leads to anxiety, and when you cannot control your child, you cannot control what other people are going to do, and to an extent, like you can control your kid to an extent, but they're going to be children, they're going to do stuff. I think the analogy I gave a couple episodes ago was that sometimes Ellie makes a huge mess and I don't want her to make a mess, but I can't control her, and it's okay because she is learning and she is growing. So we need to give grace to ourselves and grace to other people as well, because they don't know what we're thinking. They can't read our minds. They don't have to do what we think they should do. So yeah, I think that's really important. Thank you for sharing that. I think for me, one of the hardest struggles of becoming a dad, becoming a parent, was because we were still so young. So we were 21 when Ellie was born. Yeah, we were 21. And like Kinsey said, we had a ton of friends that were still single, a ton of friends that were just kind of still dating. We had some young married friends, but they could do essentially whatever they wanted because they didn't have a child. I remember we went to Hawaii when Ellie was 3 months old with our friends Nathan and Jordan, and we brought our 3-month-old daughter with us on this vacation. And so many people were like, I cannot believe you are taking your daughter to like on a 6-hour plane ride there and then a 6-hour plane ride back. It's going to be a long trip for you guys. But we still wanted to live our lives. Like we weren't going to let like Ellie control how we were living. So it was different, and I missed out on a lot of opportunities. And for me, because I've been involved in so many things growing up, I've always been a super social guy. Like when somebody invites me to do something, like I want to say yes, I want to hang out. So for me, I had to learn how to say no, and I had to learn how to prioritize my family over some of these little things that I didn't need to be doing anymore. Do I still make time for friends? Absolutely. Do I still make time for myself? Absolutely. But that time has lessened because of a choice that we made to have a child. So we had to reprioritize, had to sort of maybe suck up our own pride and whatever, and do what's best for us and for our child. So that was definitely the hardest thing for me as a parent. And just an encouragement to all you parents out there, like whether your kids are babies, whether they're grown up or teenagers or whatever, like you're doing an amazing job. And I think that it's so important that you understand that there is many different right ways to parent your child. And you don't need to be feeling the guilt of what every other mom is doing, especially in a time like this where kids are having to be kids are having to do school at home, and life just looks different for so many people. So give yourself some grace, take a break, read a book, I don't know, go for a walk, do something, reset, and then get back into it, because God has given you an amazing gift in your children, and he wants you to steward them in the right way and lead them in the way that he's calling them to go. So that's where I will end that question at. And here's the best question of the night, because I wanted to hear what you had to say about me as my wife. What is one quality in your spouse, that being me, that you love the most, and that really that is helpful for your marriage? I didn't want you to just like brag on me. I mean, I kind of did because I wanted to hear it, but what's a great quality in me that has benefited our marriage?
Honestly, it's your ability to see things with grace. Because every time I've not communicated with you about a plan and we've made plans and it wasn't what you wanted, like you are one of the most level-headed, open, honest, like not go with the flow, but like you take responsibility, but then you'll also see situations as they are. And so even when I'm being like, if I'm being ridiculous, you're able to pull me out of that and be like, okay, did you even think about this? Because like there's another person in this situation. What about this? If that makes sense. And so just like everything that you've talked about so far today about like giving grace in situations, you are so good at that you bring me down from my little pedestal sometimes and remind me to see that I can't see the whole situation. Yeah. And to just love in everything. Yeah.
Hey, I like this. You can talk about me all you want. This is fun. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. I think that I only asked that question because I think it's important to hear what married people or people in relationships find important in their spouse, because you want to know. Yeah. Like you want to know what qualities that you I think
it's
there are
also
certain
important-
qualities that you should look for, and that you shouldn't like maybe budge on in people. Not saying that you can't, that they have to have everything and complete a checklist or whatever, but I think there are certain things that are beneficial for a relationship. So,
well, not that you won't budge on, but just that you're willing to say this is important to me because,
right.
And then giving the other person the ability to take that and like run with it, whether it's in a bad way, and then you're like, okay, I need to rethink this, or it's in a good way, and they're like, oh,
yeah,
okay, this is good. But I think it's also really important to speak to people about their character and what is important about them and what sets them apart and makes them just like a genuinely good person in your corner and why you love them.
Yeah. I would say one of the best qualities in you that I think really benefits our marriage is this. And I totally forgot what I was going to say. I didn't even write it down. It was right here. No, I'm just kidding. You have quite a few great qualities. One is that you're a great mom and that you support me in pretty much everything that I do. I love that I can talk to you about literally anything. There's no judgment in what I say. And there's definitely a time and place for a spouse to, kind of give you advice and to point you in the right direction. But I think there's also a time for a spouse to listen and to be the shoulder to cry on, just the person in your corner. And I really appreciate the way that you have just allowed me to mess up. You've allowed me to make mistakes. You've allowed me to really live life. And, I think you've been in the corner with me the whole time, and I didn't feel judged. I've never felt like I've let you down. I've never felt like you've been disappointed in me, because you have always been so just, I guess, judgment free. And that's so important. I would hate for anybody to be in a relationship and feel like they're being judged by their spouse and feel like they can't be 100% honest with their spouse. So I really appreciate that. That's what you've been for me. And that's just one thing of the many that McKinsay does great for me in our marriage. I mean, if I said everything I loved about you, there wouldn't be enough time. Nobody would listen to the podcast. Let's just say it like that. Okay. No, there's plenty of things. And, before we hang up the phone on tonight's conversation, if you could give one piece of advice to anybody about whether it be dating, singleness, marriage, parenting, whatever, what is like maybe one or two pieces of advice that you could give that you would say are pretty key to winning at relationships?
I think this has to go with relationships, but also just with life, is to live in the present and to like be in love with where you are in every season, and to not always be looking forward for what's coming next, or waiting or pushing for the next step. Like embrace where you are, love it, live it, and just soak it in, because as much as you want the next thing to come, where you're at right now is where you're supposed to be, and you don't want to get to the next step and forget where you were.
Yeah, I think that also when you're too focused on what's to come or too excited about the next area of your life, you do miss a lot of things, but it also leads to a lot of like contempt where you're at, and it'll lead to a lot of depression. It could lead to anxiety because you just don't like the position that you're in, because you're too tunnel visioned, looking to where you want to go. So I think that's really good advice. Be content where you are.
In a relationship, I feel like it'll lead to a lot of resentment just because the other person could take it as, well, what we're doing right now isn't good enough. Yeah, that's good. Thank you for sharing that. I think that if I could give one piece of advice to single, married parents or people in relationship, whatever, I would say, I think we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but to really know who you are. And not in a sense of like knowing what you want to be when you grow up, or knowing what your life's going to look like in 20 years or 5 years or whatever, but know who you are, like know where your identity is found. Because when you don't know where your identity is, it makes it so easy to be hurt, to be confused, and you don't want to rely on a spouse to provide you your identity. You don't want to rely on friends or money or a job to give you identity. Because you want identity that's everlasting. And I believe that when you find your identity and who God has created you to be, it's no longer
and I feel like I've said this on every episode so far, but it's no longer Austin, the youth pastor, or Austin, the waiter at Denny's, but it's Austin, the child of God. It's Austin, and God has already made a path for me to follow, and trusting and knowing in that's where my identity is, and I will never have to waver in that. So just knowing who you are is so key, because otherwise I think it'll just lead to a lot of heartache.
And otherwise I feel like it leads to also you trying to fit in where you're not supposed to be.
Yeah, that's true. And and if you're in a relationship right now, or you're single right now and you're saying, Austin, I don't know who I am, that is okay. You can ask God who he says you are. You go open your Bible, and there are so many things about who God says that you are, and find your identity and your worth and your value in those things. Don't find it in how much money you make. Don't find it in your spouse, or how great you are at sports, or whatever it is.
Otherwise, you'll never be happy.
Yeah, you'll never be happy. You'll never be content, like Kinsey was saying earlier. So, and I want to see all you guys win at relationships. I want to see Kinsey and I win at relationships. And don't get us wrong, we are not perfect by any means. And I'm sure you guys assume that listening, but we are growing. It's been a great 6 years so far, and I look forward. I remember what I was going to say about one quality in you that makes our marriage great is this, just to backtrack a little bit. But I love, one thing that I can count on for you is that I know that you are in this for the long run, that this relationship is serious to you. It's not a joke. It's not something that you take lightly. And I'm not saying this to say that Kinsey and I will never get divorced. I'm not saying that we're above anything like that, because I think that anybody could fall into things like that. But what I love about you is that I don't have to question your loyalty to me. I don't have to question whether or not you're gonna make me sleep on the couch, or you're gonna be angry at me for the next week. Like, I know that you are in this and you want to fix whatever is wrong, and that I can always come to you when we have a problem, and we will get it resolved. So that's another thing that's super amazing quality in you. So thank you for doing that. So guys, I think that's all we got for this episode, but thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate all of you guys that have been listening to the podcast. I appreciate Kinsey for coming on. Thank you so much to my beautiful wife for coming on. And if you want to give her a follow on social media, Kinsey, what is your username?
McKinsay Naillon.
On Instagram?
On everything.
On everything. Go give her a follow. Check her out. She's posting great content. So guys, thank you so much for listening. Give a like, subscribe, comment, review, whatever you got to do. Thanks for joining me on the Life Podcast today.